House will now attend to the regular calendar of Committee of Conference reports on Senate bills. And recognize the clerk.
Mr. Speaker, Senate Bill 61, relative to surface water setbacks for landfills.
Representative Aaron moves that we adopt the Committee of Conference report, and these people are freely against.
Representative Aaron moves that we adopt the Committee of Conference report. Chair recognizes Representative Germano.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last time, I guess it was about a month ago, I got up to speak about SB61. I described to all of you what we saw in the committee and the influence of the industry that made me step by step move to a position where I couldn't support the bill that was as it was written. Since that time, some of you may have seen the article that was in the Concord Monitor. This is also in a number of other media outlets. We have received confirmation in the form of emails between a lawyer for Casella Waste Management and officials at DES, which have confirmed the suspicions that I and others have had about how directly Casella has shaped this process, indeed dictated the terms of the legislation that we are voting on.
The member will suspend. I know this is a very controversial bill, but we're not going to allow any intent to be brought onto anybody, whether it be state employees, whether it be private people, or whether it be a lobbyist. So for all the members that are going to speak on this bill, keep that in mind, that's not allowed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Each of us has a very difficult decision to make today. I don't pretend that this is an easy decision to make for anybody on either side of the aisle. What I want to say today is that whether you vote in favor of the Committee of Conference report or you vote against it, we have to think about what our responsibilities are going forward. If you vote in favor of this amendment, or pardon me, the report and the bill, it has a 2-year abeyance, and that 2-year abeyance is not nothing. I concede that. But it is still our responsibility to exercise all of the oversight that we have been tasked with exercising by the people who sent us here. We need to have an oversight committee in E&A, Environment and Agriculture. We've talked about that, and we need to follow it every step of the line, from the report that takes 120 days to the writing of the rule process. Seeing how much this bill has been crafted by special interests only reinforces how important that oversight responsibility is. Likewise, if you vote against this today, the rules will expire in June of next year. At that point, DES will have to rewrite rules. That is their responsibility, and it is our responsibility to oversee it with or without SB61. My concern, as I have expressed before, is that the hiring of a consultant which is favorable to the industry will lead to a writing of rules which is favorable to the industry. I was not elected by special interests representing any industry. I'm not here to represent the interests of any particular industry. I am here to represent the interests of the people in my districts and in the people of the state of New Hampshire. So whether 61 passes or it doesn't pass, whatever side you end up voting on, what I implore you to do, what I implore this House to do, is to strenuously, to vigorously exercise our oversight responsibilities every step down the line to make sure that the rules we get are a lot better than the bill we got. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Potenza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have clearly stated all the reasons SB61 needs to be thrown in the trash, pun intended. SB61 has always been bad for health and the environment. not only kicks the can down the road, but it kicks it in the wrong direction. I'm not here to rehash any of the arguments against it. I'm here to present new information we didn't have when we voted 226-152 against my bipartisan floor amendment 3 weeks ago. Although there's obvious ethical issues with drafting this legislation throughout the 6-month process to get here, I am more upset with the fact that this influence and control is blatantly putting the future and health and safety of New Hampshire citizens at risk. And with all the new information we have leading up to today, there shouldn't be one vote in this House to concur SB61. If you are stuck on the only argument in support of 61 because of a 2-year abeyance on landfill permitting, while new rules are written, here's why that argument doesn't hold water. DES has repeatedly said they are already well into writing new site-specific setback landfill permitting rules because the current rules expire in July of 2024. So this process is well underway. This bill is 100% not necessary. Why would we spend money on a report which only hears from one expert with one point of view versus multiple points of view? If DES needs more expertise to complete these rules, the legislature can easily provide that by holding a 1-day public hearing, inviting all the experts to provide all of their information, the data, the models, etc., to be compiled for the agency. Over the last 3 years of hearings, we have tons of free and readily available information from all points of view they can utilize to help them. Hey, I'll even volunteer to compile it all for them. SB61 guarantees a one-sided report favoring the industry stakeholders. Why would we ever pay $200K for a one-sided information which is already free? We know that the industry already has the information in this report that is like easily accessible. They could literally just grab it out of a filing cabinet on a top drawer. The E&A committee knows this because they have been hearing this information for years now. So why is there a rush to pass this bill which removes legislative oversight when New Hampshire doesn't need another landfill for at least 20 to 30 years? This body should easily see the agenda here and answer that question. Shouldn't our focus next session be on reducing the amount of out-of-state trash we are taking in from states like Massachusetts? The other body killed HB 56 with almost no discussion, and then insisted on making more changes to their own bill that we concurred with on June 8th. That's the only reason we're still here talking about landfills. But the changes made the bill even more friendly towards the one company at the heart of this issue. The sad part is the bill actually got better for the industry in the committee of conference. So between January and June, there was a whole strong-arm approach from the Senate that they wouldn't take anything from the House. And then in the committee of conference, they actually changed the conflict of interest statement, and it's now worthless. It basically talks in circles. I look forward to my colleagues on the other side who will talk common sense about their traditional core value of protecting the environment while not unduly burdening the industry. Certainly the two chambers can come together in January and produce a bill that offers some real protections for New Hampshire surface water. Until our state can produce a detailed setback rule, there is an obvious stopgap improvement in the meantime. Simply, DES could change the ridiculous 200-foot uniform setback rule to one that says, basically, the Department of Environmental Services will choose a site-specific setback to surface water in every individual permit application from now on, based on local hydrogeologic conditions. No new bill is needed right now. No taxpayer funds need to be sent, period, end of story. When new information arises, it's time to change course. Let's make doing the right thing popular again. Please vote no to non-concur with SB 61. Mr. Speaker, I ask for a division vote.
Chair recognizes Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I rise again
to talk about my reservations with this bill. As indicated by my esteemed colleague, Representative Germana, and my other esteemed colleague, Representative Potenza, there are problems with the process in getting us to where we are today. The process was entirely weighted on one side. Previously, my colleagues had written a good bill, HB 56, but the folks on the other side killed the bill and gave us a study bill. It never made sense to me. Now we know why the bill was so weak and the process has gone from bad to worse. With the evidence in hand, we now see why the bill does not reflect the wishes of the people who will be most affected by it. The process was neither fair nor transparent. Our committee was told that this bill was not about a particular company or a particular landfill, but respectfully, evidence has proven to the contrary. People who will be directly impacted by this bill do not want the bill, and they certainly do not want the landfill. And they now have no confidence in the process. They are not granted a seat in this hall. We sit here as their representatives. If we do not represent their interest, who will? I now know that a bad bill is really not better than no bill. If this bill fails, DES will have a year and all the help they need to write a better rule that is currently on the books. And there are qualified scientists and professionals with all the knowledge to assist them for far less than $200,000. Meanwhile, we will be watching. Going forward, we must do better than this flawed process. Our natural resources are the reason that so many people want to live in New Hampshire or come visit our state. Only a fool seeks to foul his own nest. If it's true that the measure of a man or a woman is what they do with power, let it be said that in advocating for the rights of those who will bear the burdens of the decisions we make here, they were foremost in our thoughts as we weigh these decisions in accord with our conscience. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Wheeler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, this is the last day, and let me just say thank you to all the representatives who have shown me, a freshman with dreadlocks, such respect in my first term in the New Hampshire State House. This is New Hampshire, and that's why we are here. So thank you. I rise today in support of non-concur on this legislation because we have water warriors in the North Country who are begging us to protect their water. I rise today because born and raised in New Hampshire, I'm going to be damned if I'm going to let our water be controlled by an industry which has no qualms whatsoever for destroying our land, our environment, and our lakes. This is not Casella's body. We are the New Hampshire House of Representatives. We are elected by our constituents, and none of us can go to our constituents after passing a bill such as this and say that we protected our environment. There is no rush here. The people in the North Country want us to kill this bill. That's exactly what we should do. Listen to my colleague from Keene, my colleague who sits behind me, and my colleague over there from Manchester. Join us in standing against Casella, against their lobbyists, and killing this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The representative will refrain from referring to the company. Chair recognizes Representative Houle.
That was quite the speech to follow. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill as amended by the House, and I'm going to read an important section and talk about what the language means. This is in section 3, paragraph Roman numeral 3A. Criteria for determining a site-specific setback of a landfill footprint from perennial surface water bodies, that would be lakes, rivers, streams, right, to prevent, attenuate, or otherwise remediate the potential release of contaminants to each surface body of water from the landfill footprint. Any rules adopted by the department under this paragraph shall, in addition to other factors the department deems necessary for rules, to provide adequate protection. Adequate protection. Is that good enough in a state where tourism is an important element, where our rivers and streams and the natural beauty of our state is something we all want to protect? Shouldn't that say something like best in class protection? Adequate doesn't seem good enough. We were put here by our citizens as the largest legislative body in the U.S., other than Congress, to represent their wishes. I would think that everybody in this room wants to do their best to protect our natural landscape, to be good stewards of the environment. Not necessarily to worship it, but to be good stewards of it so we protect it, so we can pass it on to our children. I would ask that you would oppose the concur motion and make sure the rules that are adopted go through this body in particular in a way that protects our water bodies, our streams, and our lakes. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Speaker, sorry. SB61 provides procedures for DES rulemaking on setbacks between new landfills and surface water bodies. The Committee of Conference agreed to use the House version we passed 2 weeks ago with an amendment which corrects typographical errors and clarifies the language for the one-time extension of the rulemaking deadline that was the House version. This bill directs DES to hire one or more consultants to examine current laws and rules and recommend updates to those rules that take into consideration a set of technical factors, including soil, stratigraphy and permeability, volume, gradients, and travel time of groundwater supplying the surface water body, bedrock lithology and structure, hydraulic conductivity, and other factors the department deems necessary. The Commissioner of DES, Bob Scott, is in favor of this bill. Currently, DES does not have the manpower or expertise to do this work alone. This bill grants DES the help they have requested without incurring the cost of one or more new permanent staff hires. Third-party assistance here makes sense, and it will be done through an RFP process that has specific requirements and language preventing any conflict of interest as well. Additionally, there will be points along this rulemaking process for public scrutiny and public input. The language in SB 61 was crafted by Senate members, House members, DES, business stakeholders, the North Country Alliance for Balanced Change, and other parties. That is how legislation is normally crafted in our committees and chambers. We all know that nothing is done here in a vacuum. SB 61 is written and amended by the Committee of Conference is sound and vetted legislation and will provide DES with the much needed expertise and assistance to update its current 30-year-old landfill siting rules. It is very important to note that during the process of establishing new landfill setback rules, any and all landfill permit applications will be held in abeyance. And when the rules are completed within 24 months, the permit application must be modified to comply with those new rules. If this committee of conference report is not accepted by you today, then any landfill permits can be granted next week or next month, this year or next year, with the old rules still in place, which includes a minimum 200-foot setback from a body of water. That is not an acceptable option. By accepting this committee of conference report, it will give the landfill permit granting activity a 2-year pause with a one-time 90-day extension, if necessary, and that will happen right away. This bill is possible now. We can eliminate the current possibility of a 200-foot setback to any body of water now, and we can give a 2-year pause to permitting now, while new rules are still being developed. We must not let this important chance slip away, and I urge you, my colleagues, to support and pass this committee of conference report now. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Potenza has requested a division. Members, take your seats. This will be a division vote. The motion before us is to concur on Senate Bill 61. This is a division vote. Chair recognizes Representative Comtois for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that DES is already in the process of writing the rules, and I have been assured that they will be completed in August of 2024, and that the permitting process takes a minimum of 2 years, minimum. And Mr. Speaker, if I know that this is a feel-good bill, that we in the E&A committee were told that this would be the only bill the executive branch would sign by someone at DES, and that a lobbyist for one of the parties helped with the language. And Mr. Speaker, if I know that any information given to DES by the consultant can be ignored, let me repeat that, can be ignored, why would I then spend $200,000 of taxpayer money? Mr. Speaker, if I know that as a member who lives in the Lakes region, the protection of our lakes is not something that we should take lightly. And finally, Mr. Speaker, we are the legislative branch elected by our constituents. We are beholden to them, not to the executive branch, not to an agency, and certainly not to any lobbying group. Would I now press the red button for non-concur? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Representative Megan Murray for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If I know that SB61 included many stakeholders' input, and that it includes conflict of interest language, a 2-year abeyance on citing landfills, and that our rules process is open to the public with stakeholders, and that the rules process has joint legislative oversight, and if I also know that a couple of weeks ago this was our House position, would I now press the green button to accept the Committee of Conference report? Thank you.
Has everybody turned on their voting stations? Make sure you do. The motion before us is to concur on Senate Bill 61. This is a division vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds. If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will If all members present had an opportunity to vote, House will attend the state of the vote. 134 voting yea, 238 voting nay. The committee of competence report fails.